Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our special guest, Paris Cullins, one of our favorite comic book pencilers when we were growing up. You did so many great books, Paris, in the 80s and 90s, and then you basically retired. You've been doing interesting things other than comics, and now you're talking about, I think before we started recording, how you're sort of coming back around now.
Yes, I am. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm doing work with my friends and comrades, the one and only Ben Sutherland, who does Indie Speedway, and we're working out. We just did a helping with an animation assignment that Ben did a lot of work on.
Hi, I'm Ben. I've been kind of just chilling in the background. Paris, he's been a great help with our magazine Indie Speedway, where we've been doing like interviews with voice actors and comic artists and things like that, while also producing original work. And Paris gave us a lot of help with a cartoon that we're now repurposing. And that was like a big crunch, I think, for like a whole month?
Yep.
Very cool.
A lot of fun.
I'm so glad that we're going to be seeing new Paris Cullins art again. That is great. We have all missed you.
Thank you.
Great. So let's go ahead and jump back in with the rest of the books from April 1968.
Woo-hoo!
So I believe Fantastic Four is your turn, Matt.
All right, let's go ahead and cover Fantastic Four number 73, Giant Guest Star Bonanza, where we've got now it's pretty much just the Fantastic Three, Reed, Ben, and Johnny, on the cover fighting Daredevil, Thor, and Spider-Man with Reed versus Daredevil.
Yes, that inseparable trio, Daredevil, Thor, and Spider-Man.
It's very strange, isn't it? What a strange, unholy three trio to have here. We're picking up from last month's Daredevil when the Fantastic Four knew that Daredevil and Dr. Doom had switched bodies. They don't know that they then switched bodies back. All they know is that Daredevil's on his way over, and they're like, oh, this must be Doom in Daredevil's body. We should go ahead and try to kill him. And it's like, no, you shouldn't, even if you thought this was Dr. Doom, especially because you really have no reason to think he's Dr. Doom at this point. Like, Dr. Doom cannot hide who he is. Like, Dr. Doom struts like Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom talks like Dr. Doom. Like, this is so clearly not Dr. Doom. This is so clearly Daredevil in Daredevil's body. But this whole issue is predicated on this massive misunderstanding that should never happen. Let Marveldom cheer, let humanity shout, Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby have bestowed another masterpiece upon mankind, exotically embellished by Joe Sinnott, laconically lettered by Artie Simek. Bizarrely, they've got this huge gun here on the first page. And it's like, I hope I get my paws on him before you belt him with that souped up pop gun. Like, this is the world's most terrifying gun for someone to try to shoot at you. Poor Daredevil does not deserve it. Daredevil is approaching the Fantastic Four. I think Daredevil knows at this point, why they're coming after him. And so why he would even want to get anywhere near them at this point, I don't know. Daredevil gets in a fight with Human Torch, soaks him in I'm always a fan of water towers on top of New York buildings, and soaks him in one that is a well-done sequence. And then Spider-Man shows up like, hey, I'm fighting the Fantastic Four. You want in on this? And Spider-Man's like, do I? That sounds like the greatest idea in the world. Let's fight the Fantastic Four together. And then Spider-Man's like, wait, there's Thor. Let's get Thor in on this too. Let's have him help us fight the Fantastic Four. None of this makes any sense. There is no reason for any of these people to fight each other. Even more bizarrely, they explain that this Thor fight is in between his fights with the Wrecker and the Destroyer, which makes no sense. Steve, remind us what Thor was doing in between his fights with the Wrecker and the Destroyer.
Nothing.
Because he was dead.
Right. He was dead. Yes, he was dead.
The Wrecker killed him. When he finally awoke from being dead, the Destroyer was right there. There is no time for Thor to be doing anything between these fights, but it can't be set after the current Thor storyline because Thor still doesn't have his powers, and he's had his powers restored in the current storyline. Makes no sense. And, you would think this would be a case where they have different writers and artists on the two books, but no, they're both Lee Kirby books. Very strange. They end up getting in a huge fight with basically Reed versus Daredevil, Thing versus Thor, and Johnny versus Spider-Man. And it is a really nice fight. It makes absolutely no sense, but it is a really nice fight. Sinnott doing an amazing job inking Kirby. Page 11 is just a big splash of Thing and Thor pounding on each other. It is fantastic. Finally, they're seemingly all about to kill each other when who should show up but Sue, who throws force fields around everybody and is like, Think, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, Right. I had to come, darling, to save you from a terrible mistake. He is the real Daredevil. But how can you know? It was on the 6 p.m. TV news. Doom's in Latveria. So then that's it. That's the end of the comic. They all realize it was a big misunderstanding. Reed kisses Sue. There's a big glowing heart over the Baxter building, and it says next issue, the Silver Surfer and Galactus. So that is this extremely fun but unnecessary issue. Paris, what did you think of this issue?
This is what made me love comics. It didn't have to matter. It mattered that they jumped around. It mattered that I got to see Spider-Man fight against the Human Torch. Their fight never made any sense to me in the first place, but it was always fun to see. This was, what's the word for it? The best of the merry Marvel marching society. They're thumping and bumping and doing a great job. And any excuse to see the Thing, Rockface, is always a great thing. Although, look, Sue's got a great, what is that?
Her coat?
Yeah, but it's one of those famous ones. That was a good thing about Kirby, too. He also carried on a lot of ongoing fashion that was big in the fashion magazine. He would always put one favorite outfit on them and then go on to the regular comic book world. That was pretty good about his work.
Well, and he was having to be careful here because Sue is very pregnant, but they can't really show pregnant people on in comics. And so she has to be wearing a big outfit and not be really shown from the belly down in order to hide the fact that she's very pregnant.
Yes. So I just have a couple of thoughts about this. Notice, I think it's page 2, you actually get to see Daredevil's eyes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really unnerving. I don't think we've ever seen his eyes before.
Oh, interesting.
During one of the fight scenes, I think it's on page 6, there's a panel where Daredevil is kicking Thing in the solar plexus, basically, and he's kicking him back. And I think that Stan Lee recognized this makes no sense. Daredevil shouldn't be able to knock over Thing. So he added some dialogue in there. Your nerve blast ray, you used it against me? He says, I warned you, Ben. Daredevil's thinking, I had a feeling it wasn't my kick that stopped him. That very much feels like Stan Lee coming back in later and being like, okay, let's make this make sense. Yeah. And, it's funny, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were both the sons of Jewish immigrants, but they didn't tend to be very explicitly Jewish in anything that they did in the comics. But at one point, it's from off panel, so I don't remember who it is saying this, but it says, any one of those characters has the power to hold off a small army. Even Moishe Dayan would think twice about tangling with them. And Moishe Dayan was apparently the Israeli defense minister. I had to look up the name. I didn't know who that was. Anyway, overall, a fun battle issue. But yes, the whole Spider-Man, Thor, Daredevil thing makes no sense.
Yeah, I like the way you put it, Paris. Any excuse. This is the any excuse issue where that should just be on the cover. Special any excuse issue where heroes get to fight each other.
Somebody flipped the coin.
All right, so shall we move on to Strange Tales here?
Yes.
Okay, so
one of the all-time great Marvel comics.
All right. So, Strange Tales, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Doctor Strange. We have a Steranko S.H.I.E.L.D. cover. We've got Fury and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. all rushing towards us with a big American flag flying in the background. Beautiful cover, and actually very similar in layout to the Captain America cover we're going to be looking at in just a minute. So, I keep on forgetting her name. What is the name of the Claw's niece?
Suwan.
Yeah. She has been looking like she's been killed. Jimmy Woo is saying that he is going to wreak vengeance for this. Meanwhile, the credits: Stan Lee editor, Jim Steranko writer/illustrator, Joe Sinnott inker, Sam Rosen letterer. Merely one of the greatest teams Marvel has ever assembled, which is not necessarily being that over exaggerated there. This really is just a fantastic issue. So the issue is called Armageddon, and then we get, I think, was this the only 4-page splash that we ever had in comics? I'm sure someone else has done it at some point, right?
As far as I know, this is the only ever in any comic book ever 4-page splash page.
We've had covers that have been multiple ones together before.
That is a great piece of work. It is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is just stunning So it's just 4 pages that is one drawing, basically, of S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting the Claw's goons in the Claw's HQ. And meanwhile, the Claw has a weird, like, moire pattern effect going on him to indicate his powers that he's using. It really is stunning. So the Claw is going to get away in some kind of, it says again something called the Infinity Sphere to enter nucleophoretic drive. I don't know. One way or the other. He's going to some extra dimensional thing. And Nick Fury comes in, sees him disappearing, is able to get some kind of gizmo on that's able to take him into the same extra dimensional space. So on page 8, there's a close-up on Fury's face on panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where it looks like Fury has an eyeball in the eye patch.
Yeah, I don't think that's supposed to be an eyeball.
You don't think so? I don't know.
No.
It looks, I don't know. It looks like it's supposed to be eyeball-ish. But then at the bottom of that page, we have one of those spectacular color hold, moire pattern, crazy.
Spirograph. I would say this is a spirograph illustration.
You think so? I was trying to figure out what this was. I don't know. That doesn't look like spirograph to me either. One way or the other, it's just mind-blowing. It's supposed to be some kind of psychic battle between Fury and the Claw there. Then it turns out the Claw is just a robot. And this whole time, all of this has been orchestrated by Dr. Doom, who is in another 2-page splash, standing over a literal chessboard, moving the pieces of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Claw around. And a weird psychedelic, what's the word I'm looking for that image in the background of that little AI robot that is that he's playing against there? Looks like a galaxy brain kind of new agey looking thing back there.
Yes, the prime mover, they call him. So I should say at some point, Nick Fury, turns out he has had the Satan Claw on him this whole time. And we have no idea where he's been hiding it because it's really big. But somehow he takes out the Satan Claw and puts it on. This is the weirdest ending. It's the weirdest ending for a Marvel comic. Certainly the weirdest ending for like a 12-issue storyline or however long this storyline has been. To suddenly end the storyline. And by the way, Nick Fury never finds any of this out. Nick Fury doesn't find out that he's just been a pawn on Doctor Doom's chessboard this whole time. Only we find this out reading the comic, where it's like, oh, Nick Fury, as far as he's concerned, is just like, well, I defeated the Yellow Claw, and he was actually a robot this whole time. That storyline is over now. And only we find out that, like, oh, yeah, this was all a big chess game that Doctor Doom was playing against one of his robots, which he calls the Prime Mover. It is the weirdest ending ever. And this is already an issue where we've gotten this amazing 4-page splash page. This is such a weird issue, and I love it. And they make it clear that they want you to buy another copy of the comic in order to see the 4 pages all next to each other. So sometimes this 4-page spread, it has been reprinted in such a way where it folded out, where it was in the reprint trade paperback in a way that folded out. And I suspect one of the reasons they haven't reprinted Steranko as much as they should is because they don't want to have to pay the extra printing costs of doing the fold out, but they know they sort of have to do it. They're not going to tell you to buy 2 different copies of the trade paperback.
All right. So let's move on then, I guess, to Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts, the second story in this issue. So the title is This Dream, This Doom, which is a little confusing, seeing as how we just had a Doctor Doom splash page on the previous page. But, what you going to do? Stan Lee supervised this stunning spectacle of startling sorcerific splendor from the pens of demoniac Denny O'Neil scripter and druidic Dan Adkins artist, adroitly assisted by Sam Rosen letterer. So we have Denny O'Neil back on Doctor Strange. We had him.
How many writers have we had on this storyline at this point? Last time we saw Denny O'Neil, I think, was when Ditko was drawing the book.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Now he is back. This has got to be the 6th writer that we've had on this one massive 20-issue storyline.
Yeah. So we see that the Ancient One is back. Last time we saw, he had been merged into one of the henges at Stonehenge, but he now reveals that this was a ruse so that he could give his power to Doctor Strange, but now he has returned. Doctor Strange is able to take the Ancient One back to his own Sanctum Sanctorum, which presumably is in Tibet, but this looks like this is otherworldly, this double-page splash we have on page 3 and 4. But, okay, sure. It looks beautiful.
It doesn't really look like a double page splash, but you got to
Right.
kind of look in the background. But it's a big ice bridge.
Yeah, so it
that
looks like a
stretches
single
across.
page splash on page 3, and then on page 4, the other part of the double page splash is just the background of the panels. They're trying once again to try to get Victoria Bentley back. Doctor Strange is able to see her in this other dimension. He's trying to use his spells to free her, but unfortunately she needs to participate in freeing herself, but they can't communicate with her, so she doesn't know to do this. That attempt fails. Then the Ancient One says, well, I have this special gem that will allow you to enter that same dimension with her, but beware, no one has ever come back from going there. And Doctor Strange is like, well,
That helps.
yeah, exactly. Doctor Strange is like, well, but I must go. So he heads on, and we get some what look like they're probably Ditko swipes of backgrounds on page 9. It just looks too Ditko-y.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually I read a Dan Atkins Doctor Strange comic and I can just tell where the swipes are. I'm like, oh, that's the swipe from this issue. That's the swipe from this issue. Dan Atkins always claimed that he started off doing all swipes on Doctor Strange and then eventually stopped doing swipes. Hope Springs Eternal with Dan Atkins. I look at page 9. I'm like, maybe that's not swipes. Maybe this is original Ditko type other dimensional stuff from Dan Atkins, because I don't immediately recognize where it's swiped from, but that's probably me being too hopeful that he actually did anything not swiped ever.
So this is a bizarre dimension they're in, because at one point, what I can only describe as Godzilla ends up coming out of a dimensional portal. Is not Godzilla, but it's very Godzilla-esque. And then a Viking warrior on horseback comes in through another dimensional portal. So that's just all coming their way while Yandroth, the scientist supreme, is leveling a gun at him. So that's where we leave this issue. He is being surrounded on all sides by a Godzilla, 2 Viking warriors, and a gun-toting scientist. So that's quite the cliffhanger. You have any thoughts?
Atkins is doing a great job at creating a Ditko-like dimension, either by swiping Ditko or by doing it himself. I think that, there's some really nice use of shadow. The page 7 has some really nice shadows on it. Everybody's face is pretty much half eclipsed in shadow, which I always like to see.
Right.
I liked the double page spread of the frozen world in Tibet, which does seem otherworldly. I am more than ready for this storyline to be done. It's been going on for more than 20 issues. Doctor Strange still has not had a chance to have a snack or use the bathroom in a very long time. But I am looking forward to this storyline maybe getting finished next issue. Maybe. Let's hope.
That's funny.
One can hope. Okay, so, yeah, Matt, why don't you tell us about Captain America in his own magazine at last?
Yes, Captain America in his own magazine at last. So we already had earlier this month the Incredible Hulk taking over Tales to Astonish and getting his own big logo on the book for the first time. Now in this issue, we have Captain America taking over Tales of Suspense with his own big logo on the book for the first time. Cap in his own magazine at last. Captain America, it says in big letters. Then it says big premiere issue. Then we have a somewhat unusual Kirby cover in that it's not very good. We've got an unusual Kirby cover of just Captain America with a bunch of other heroes behind him, but it's not really drawn like a collage. It's drawn as if Captain America is just levitating up in the air, because too many of the characters are on the same level, are on the same plane. Like everybody but Captain America is on the same plane, and it doesn't look like a collage to me. It just looks like Captain America's levitating. I'm not crazy about it, but it's nice to have this sort of cover on Cap's first issue of Cap's own book. But then we have the same problem we had with the Hulk, where you're jumping in the middle of a storyline, but you feel the need to shoehorn in an origin. But it's not his real origin. It's not the story of, the boy from Brooklyn who takes the super soldier serum. Instead, we get sort of the middle of Captain America's story, where he was frozen in a block in the Arctic and was freed by some mariner and taken in by the Avengers. They don't include the broccoli people part of that story, but they have just a little glimpse of that. And they, as far as they're concerned, this is all we need of a flashback. We should say peerlessly produced and proudly presented by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, embellished by Sid Shores, lettered by Artie Simek, treasured by Irv Forbush. So, Steve, I know you weren't a fan of Sid Shores' inking on the last issue. I still like it. I like his inking fine. Paris, what do you think of the inking?
I'm a believer in Sid Shores. Not that it's going to turn out right, but that it's constructed well. And he shaded it and gave it a temperament like you were watching an old movie. So it always
Yeah.
kind of reminded me of the 1950s work he did for the other companies, because it had that Sid Shore shine on them. But it felt right in terms of regular comics, especially when the Eskimos picked him out of the iceberg and threw him, submarine and threw him, and he wakes up in the Avengers submarine.
Mm-hmm. You like that? You like the way Sid Shore thinks that?
It always reminds me that's exactly the way it went. But yeah, I love Sid Shore's work. Or Captain America for the comics he did at that time.
So then we cut back from the past to the present. Still Captain America and Black Panther fighting what will turn out to be a fake Baron Zemo. Captain America's girlfriend, Agent 13, has been ordered to kill him by Baron Zemo because she's undercover as Irma Krull. But she just fires a little high and fires over his head. And she's like, oh, he ducked. And Captain America's like, I didn't duck that fast, lady. You were firing over my head. And then Baron Zemo's like, well, you should try to shoot him again. And she's like, no time. And he's like, oh, okay, if there's no time, then I guess we'll stop trying to kill him. And she's like, why don't you show me your big weapon there? And he's like, oh, okay, you want me to show you my big weapon? Here it is. And she's like, oh, well, I happen to have a little box here. Surprise, sucker. This is a little mini flamethrower, and I'm going to flamethrow your weapon and destroy it. And he's like, no. Then they're like, she's a spy, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Shoot her. And she says, I'd face 1,000 deaths to save the world from a madman like you. And Captain America says, but you'll not face them alone, not while the Panther and I still live. And then they go ahead and attack. Everybody has a big fight. It is very well done. Agent 13 holds her own and manages to get in some good blows. Black Panther sneaks off. Now, you do get a sense that they are having to stretch these things out a little bit to fill full books when Captain America has never filled a full book before. He's always been a half book guy. Yeah. And so you get this sort of extended bit where the Black Panther sneaks off and fights a robot called the Destructron that definitely would not have been here if this was just an 11-page book. Everybody gets in a big fight for several pages. It turns out, I was kind of disappointed to hear this, that this is not Baron Zemo, that Baron Zemo did not survive his seeming death in Avengers number 15. This was Baron Zemo's pilot who was flying overhead and saw what was going on and then decided to impersonate Baron Zemo. As soon as his men find this out, they shoot him dead. And I was glad to have Baron Zemo back because I'm tired of the Red Skull having to constantly return multiple times a year in this book. And if Baron Zemo was back, then Red Skull wouldn't have to return so much. But nope, Baron Zemo's gone and then will remain gone until finally they wisely bring in his son and make his son the new Baron Zemo. And then Captain America will get a lot of good mileage out of that. They call in to Nick Fury. Nick Fury goes ahead and sends some missiles to blow up the space weapon. Captain America says to the Black Panther on the way home, well, they're still just calling him the Panther. I don't think he's ever called the Black Panther in this issue. I think he's always called the Panther because of the political issues at the time with the Black Panther Party. They never officially rename him, or here they don't officially rename him. Later they'll try to rename him the Black Leopard, but here they don't officially rename him. And at the end, Captain America invites him to join the Avengers in his place. And that's where we're going to pick up next. And it says, in next ish, it will lead to the supremely sinister, oh, guess who? The Red Skull, who is coming back in the next issue, because we keep having to bring him back over and over and over again. Okay, Paris, what did you think of this issue?
I thought it was the best work at that time they had ever done, except it had nothing to it whatsoever. You're right. It was empty and hollow, but it was the best drawn work I'd ever seen. It was most impressive, and it kept me, what's the word for it, enamored and wanting to be the newest comic book artist there ever was going to be, except that was the most empty book, most empty part of the story there ever was. You're right. It was so short and so nothing. I even forgot it existed.
Mm-hmm. Was this one of the books that your mother read to you?
She didn't read that one. She did. She didn't care much for it because it did. It was well done, well struck, but nothing in it happens. So yeah. I don't remember much about it myself, other than that's how I felt about it.
When you were reading these Jack Kirby comics, these Jack Kirby Captain America comics, did you ever dream that one day you would be taken over from Kirby on New Gods?
I made it my point that that's what I was doing. That's why I did it. I'm the first time I read a New Gods comic was a neighbor of mine. His car broke down in front, and he couldn't get it out of the parking space. So a friend of mine and myself helped push the car out, and we moved it about a block and a half out of the way and got the guy parked. And then he came running, he came back around with a whole crate of comics and said, I don't know if you guys want any of this, but thanks for pushing the car. He said he'd give me this crate of comics. And in it was the New Gods, the Demon, Commandy, and some other Kirby books.
Well, you also drew Forever People, I should say, another great Kirby comic that you got to take over drawing.
And the Forever People.
And I loved your Forever People miniseries that you did.
Thank you.
That's just wonderful that you got to read these comics as a kid and then eventually got to have the huge job of taking it over. Okay, did we have anything else to add about this issue?
I don't believe so. Let's go ahead and move on to Iron Man and Submariner, which is a weird little orphan issue because Hulk has taken over Tales to Astonish, Captain America has taken over Tales of Suspense, and these are the two odd men out, kicked out of that thing. And each of them is about to get their own books next month, but they still had these half stories ready to go here. So just a special once-in-a-lifetime issue, it says. And it just so happens that Colin is drawing both books. So that works out well. Now, I will admit that right before we were going to record, I went through and reacquainted myself with all of these stories so that I could speak about them more easily. However, I somehow missed the Iron Man story when going back through all of this stuff. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, geez, I haven't read this in like 2 or 3 weeks. What's going on? So I will do my best on this one. So The Torrent Without, The Tumult Within, with editing of Stan Lee, with the inking of Johnny Craig, with the lettering of Sam Rosen. Is it any wonder that another Marvel milestone has been reached by the talented teaming of Archie Goodwin and Gene Colan? To quickly sum up what's going on in this story, Iron Man is very low on power and was tied up to a magnetic table in a submarine which is now being filled with water. Well, he's able to power himself back up well enough to get himself free. Meanwhile, this submarine is attached to an international waters gambling ship run by the Magia, and so that ship ends up starting to sink itself because AIM is boarding everything. So we've got this AIM and the Magia and S.H.I.E.L.D. / Iron Man all fighting here. Whiplash is still there being Whiplash, and Agent Sitwell is being his unexpected badass trying to get past the AIM forces to try to get down to help Iron Man. Iron Man is able to get out just in time, just before he is drowned by the water, but then he ends up getting sucked out of the ship and into the AIM ship. So that's basically the whole thing. Overall, the story seems to be a bit of a mess. I don't know. I'm ready for them to get some direction on this storyline here, and I really don't feel that they've had it. I do like the whole AIM versus Magia versus Iron Man angle. That is fun, but I think they're just spinning their wheels, though, in some ways, even though they've got that good setup. Matt, do you have some thoughts on this? And then we'll go to Paris.
Yeah, I really like Craig's inking on Colan. This is the second issue in a row of Craig inking Colan on Iron Man, and I find it really dynamic. You know, I think of Craig and Colan as being very different artists. You know, both got their start at EC back in the day, and, you know, I think of Craig as being sort of a cartoony penciler, sort of like Jack Davis. I think of Colan as being, you know, this very shadows and light sort of sketchy penciler, sort of like Neil Adams, and to bring them together is sort of shocking, but I really like what they're doing. I really love the big splash on page 3 where you've got all the people partying on the casino boat that is getting blown apart and water is shooting in and hitting everybody. And it is really nice. I really like just the shadows and darkness. I love how they draw Sitwell's face in the whole book.
Yes.
I think it's a really nice book. I do think it's funny, like they're keeping the big M secret. They're not revealing the face of the big M, but usually when they do that in comics, it's because like the big M, the big controller, is sitting in the shadows and they're like, oh, what's the face of this guy who's in charge? But in this book, they're all running around like crazy, and yet they're still keeping his face in shadow, which takes a lot of work to do. And I think at this point we should know who he is, but we don't.
Yeah, that goes into the whole spinning its wheels sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Iron Man never even comes in contact with like anybody in this issue. He's just dealing with being stuck in the bottom of the ship the whole time.
Yeah.
and specifically all the AIM guys walking around with their bee. What do you call these things?
Oh, the beekeeper suits.
With their beekeeper suits. But the truth is, this one was well placed. It's not that the story didn't have enough to say. It's just that in each of their hands, what are they doing? And that's when it comes down to a point of you stop running out of story, but more you stop running out effectively. What did you do? You're in the panel, but doing what? Everybody's got a gun drawn, but actually no one's aiming at nobody. It's really weird. And there it is, one doorway being shot and Sitwell running through it. And then there's the Whiplash. He's running through it. And I always loved Whiplash. And I think they did a great job with him. He's one of the few comic book characters that's mild in a way, that worked himself into our new comic book universe. Mm-hmm. And he did a great job. I'm forgetting the actor's name.
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke.
He was a great Whiplash.
Yeah, he was.
He was.
And which he was worth more as Whiplash in the movie than he is in this comic book.
Yes.
It didn't ever quite come across to me. It lost a lot of its substance, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like Batroc in Captain America. If Batroc isn't fully in there fighting for a specific reason, he's kind of in there floating around and you're not knowing what to do with him at all. You're going, why is he there at all?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Although in the movie, he did do a bad job.
Yep.
I like it.
Oh, well, I would say I like the movie Whiplash better than the comic book Whiplash, but I definitely prefer the comic book Batroc to the movie Batroc. In the movie version of Batroc, who also showed up in the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show, I'm like, where's the mustache? Where is the thick French accent?
Right.
I wanted more personality to the Batroc that we saw in the movie and TV.
I wanted some real, the fighting technique that he does. Savate. Yes.
Yeah.
I need a little real Savate in it.
Yes.
See, personally, I need a little bit more Zoutalo and Batroc Zelipier. That's what I was missing.
A little Sacre Bleu.
Sacre Bleu, exactly. Yes, that's what I was missing with the movie Batroc personally. So let's go ahead and move on to the second half of this issue. Prince Namor the Submariner, call him Destiny or call him Death. So to go into what was happening in the previous part of this story, Submariner seemed to think he was recovering some of his memories from his years of amnesia that were suffered in the 50s. He seems to be getting drawn back to this place in Antarctica near the location of the old Atlantis, and he ends up finding this ice cave and this dude inside of it that calls himself Destiny. Stan Lee presents another Leviathan landmark from the pens of Roy Thomas, writer, and Gene Colan, artist. Forceful inking by Frank Giacoia, fitful lettering by Sam Rosen. So there's a fight between these two. Now, okay, storytelling-wise, Paris, page 2 of this story, there is a shot where Destiny is shooting some kind of icy blasts at Submariner, but the shot is split up into 2 separate panels. Now, oftentimes when you have one shot that is divided up into several panels, that can have a real storytelling effect. You're like drawing the reader's eye from here to here to here, or dividing up the time that's happening over, moments or something like that. Yes. Here, I can't figure out a single reason why Gene Colan would have split this up into 2 panels. Do you have any ideas on that?
No, because the truth of the matter is, he rendered his leg and his body inside the cape for you to get the idea that he's seeking footing. But I hate to say that this one looks more like an act of laziness, because he draws much better than that. So he doesn't know. Look where the ribs are. Where does the body start after the ribs? Nowhere. And where does his legs start at the back of that? They're even standing in a position that legs don't do.
Well, Speaking of position that legs don't do, the second panel of that page up on the top tier, there's a leg that's coming out at just an angle that makes exactly. It is just, it's horrifying if you think about where that leg is attached to his body if you were to spin him around. It's body horror on a Cronenberg level.
That's right.
It's really interesting because we're seeing 3 Cullen books this month, but they've got very different inkers. We've got George Tuskay inking one of the books. We had, was it Tartaglione? I forget what.
Yes.
Tartaglione inking one, Tuskay inking another, and Giacoya, who I think is Cullen's best inker, who is working for Marvel at this time, inking this one. It's really interesting to compare the 3.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Frank Giacoya's work. This may not be his best work, but I am still a fan of his work. And he was the last one that finished, and it's the truth, he's the last one that finished the last piece of work with me, Trevor Von Eaton, and Green Arrow.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, the last 4 issues was him and me and Trevor for the Green Arrow pieces done for DC at that time.
Okay. Wow.
So that's great. You got to work with him.
Yeah, but I still don't know what that weird bookend that's standing on the top of his head is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's not Cullen's strong suit, is that kind of design. Anyway, one way or the other, Destiny decides to tell his story, and he has native psychic abilities, but he was just using it to be a carnival sideshow, who called himself Mentallo. And I'm like, did they not remember they already have a villain named Mentallo in the Marvel Universe? Somebody online, I think it was Foster Coker, who's in one of the Marvel Comics groups with me, pointed out, it's like, well, maybe the other Mentallo saw this carnival sideshow guy back in the day and then decided to take his name from that. And so I'm like, okay, you get yourself a no prize. So anyway, one way or the other, he's like, this power should do more for me than just get me a sideshow salary, which indeed it should. But he then reads A Complete History of Mind Reading and decides, that's it, I must go to Antarctica to go find a hidden civilization where they knew about psychic stuff, which it doesn't make much more sense than that in the book in terms of the logic that they're following here. So he's able to get down there, find this frozen ice cave with this machinery in it that's supposed to be able to amplify up his psychic powers. He gets caught in there, but he's able to get this helmet that increases his power. Now, I don't think it increases his physical power. So how he's able to hold his own against Namor in this fist fight, I am unsure. But at the end of the story, it looks like Namor has been buried under an avalanche of ice, and Destiny is victorious. And then it just says, next ish, the origin of Namor in a book all his own. So, I love Cullen's art, usually. This has some very good Cullen art in it. Also has some questionable Cullen art from time to time. But overall, the story doesn't do much for me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Paris, how about you?
I think the same thing you're thinking. The thing is that when I think he's slacking off, he does his best to find the background. He's out in the middle of a snowstorm, and it's not a bad scene. Just it doesn't relate to anything in the background. They're somewhere, and they're going somewhere, but I don't know where. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. Just I don't understand it.
So, Matt, how about you?
So once again, we're going to be in the same position here where we're in the middle of the storyline, and then they're telling us that they're going to give him his own book next issue, and he's going to begin with his origin in the middle of his storyline. Stop doing this, folks. Why could they not? If they were going to expand these books, they should have wrapped everything up.
It just wasn't his destiny.
So that it all wrapped up before they got their own books. Or they should have, I don't know what they should have done, but they should have just put off the whole expansion by another month, giving us time to wrap up all these books or something like that. But I think that this is an okay issue. I like Destiny as a villain. Big spoiler alert. I think he's going to go on to kill a major character in this book. So he's going to become a major legendary character in this book. But I think that this is a perfectly fine issue. I look forward to him getting his own book. By the way, we were wrong before. The 3 inkers we've seen on Cullen this month, Tuska inked Daredevil. It was never Tartaglione.
Thank you for the correction.
It was Tuska, Craig, and Giacoya, and it's been fascinating to compare their 3 inking styles. But this was a perfectly okay issue.
Perfectly okay, raves Matt Bird. All right, so I guess we are moving on to our final issue of the month here, which is Avengers, which I guess would be yours, Matt.
The Avengers number 51, Thor, Iron Man, plus the restored power of Goliath. How many times has Goliath lost and regained his powers over the course of this book? And of course, as always, they never mention the Wasp on the cover. We begin the book, The Mighty Avengers, in the clutches of the Collector. So Goliath has new colored costume on the inside, and they actually have a little bit where they apologize for the colors of the cover. So apparently they were working far enough ahead where the cover had already been colored by the time they lettered the inside of the book, and it was too late to change it. So they had to apologize in the lettered text on the inside of the book for the colors being wrong on the cover. It says, from the sanctum sanctorum of Smilin' Stan Lee comes this Roy Thomas, John Buscema, two-man tour de force, inked and embellished by George Tuska. He's been doing a lot of inking this month. Lettered and relished by Sam Rosen. Again, Tuska is perfectly fine inker. He does a perfectly fine job on Buscema in this issue, not as well as Giacoya or some other inkers have done, but better than George Roussos or some of the people we've had inking him. We begin the issue. They've got Goliath hooked up to a Vibrotron, trying to vibrate his powers back into existence, I guess. Thankfully, the Wasp is very useful for once. She has to fly inside the machine and pull out the wires when it starts vibrating out of control. The Collector, meanwhile, is still trying to collect the Wasp and any other people who he sees as unique. We haven't seen him since issue 28. He leaves a comb sitting around that when the Wasp picks up the comb, this works like the port keys in Harry Potter, where like you touch the cup and the cup suddenly zaps you to another place. That's how this comb works. And she's drawn up in the air and they grab onto her limbs and are yanking on her limbs the whole time she's being flung through the air by a comb, which looks like very uncomfortable position for her to be in.
Absolutely, yes. And it just, if nothing else, the comb cutting into her hand as it as it zooms along. Yes. And then, yes, yanking her limbs out of their sockets.
So then she is sucked up into a Collector's ship. I am never a big fan of Buscema technology, and I am not a big fan of this spaceship that he is in. And this is a design for a spaceship that Buscema loves, because he will use this over and over again whenever he has to design spaceships with this sort of biplane type design that I'm not loving. Now, it turns out that the Collector has Thor as his pawn. He has somehow brainwashed or zonked Thor and is having Thor help him beat up the Avengers. By the way, on page 9, one of Buscema's favorite things to do is people really lounging in chairs.
Oh, yeah.
And he's famous for drawing people on big thrones lounging like nobody's business. You get to see the Collector do that on page 9. So the Collector is like, who else can I collect to help me do this? And he looks in on Captain America fighting in South America. He looks in on the Hulk in Asgard. He can see he's got a hell of a TV here because somehow it can pick up footage of the Hulk in Asgard. He sees Iron Man flying around, decides to grab him as well, sets Thor against Iron Man. They fight a giant robot without knees and elbows, which always bugs me.
One thing that I did notice about this month is we have Thor in his own book, in Fantastic Four, and in the Avengers. We've got Asgard showing up in Thor and in Hulk and making a cameo in the Avengers. So Thor and Asgard are really being spread out throughout the books this month.
Yep.
Yeah, and we get to see different artist interpretation, which is interesting. Anyway, they get in a big fight for several pages. They get away from the Collector. Goliath gets his powers back again, and then they get a call from Captain America and the Black Panther at the end saying that he wants to go ahead and have Black Panther be his replacement, and they talk about it. And that is the end of the issue. Next issue, enter the Panther and the death-dealing Grim Reaper. So this was surprising because we had just ended on a cliffhanger with the X-Men and Magneto and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, which I assumed was going to pick up next issue. But I guess that picks up the issue after that. But first, we're going to have an issue with the Panther dealing with Grim Reaper. So it's one thing, Paris, that we have not talked about here is that you are black. And how do you... I know. It's shocking. How do you feel about the Black Panther having his name changed to the Panther?
No, I didn't have a specific for or against. I love the Black Panther because I love drawing him. And I like that he had an interesting name, T'Challa. And I always wanted, what's the word for it? A better or a bigger chance at drawing the Black Panther comic book. I thought that even though they talk about how interesting the world of Wakanda is, they never drew it like Jack Kirby draws it. They never draw that it's a giant technological empire, and that always seemed to be missing to me. And when they started making the comic book again in the 90s, it still seemed to lack it. I tell you, because that one thing when they finally got it going was the problem that somehow someone's selling crack in Wakanda. It just didn't make sense to me. It made no sense to me, and I didn't understand it, and I couldn't quite get past it. I thought a lot could be done better with it, and I'm a big fan of the Black Panther and the Black Panther comic book. It's just I wasn't giving much of it. I liked Eric Killmonger, but even he didn't have a big enough job in it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think?
I think, and here's the weird part. I thought Jack Kirby's idea about it was better. He was a world-traveling adventurer, solving little, they were very much like Indiana Jones, mystic items and totems, and finding what they were doing in this part of this dimension and world, and finding a way to either save it or put it back.
Certainly when Jack Kirby comes back on the book, it is one of the weirdest comics ever in the late 70s.
He had Pantherettes.
The Pantherettes. I forgot about the Pantherettes.
I
did not remember this at all. Wow.
I'd forgotten about them. Yes, it is one of the weirdest books ever.
He was the Mac Panther. Holy moly.
Yeah. So that is this issue. Steve, did you have anything else to add about this issue of Avengers?
We get to see them leaning in a little bit more to Jan as wealthy heiress now, and that she's gotten herself a fancy pool made in the shape of the Avengers A that she's doing a swan dive into. And there's another point where we had already talked about Hawkeye and Goliath hanging on to Jan's limbs. On page 19, we see Thor flying away with Hawkeye hanging onto his ankle, Giant Man hanging on to Hawkeye's ankle, and Jan hanging on to Giant Man's hand. So,
even though Jan can fly.
This is a very good point. I had not really thought about that. But now, granted, Hawkeye's grip strength is going to be pretty substantial, seeing as how he is an archer. But that being said, this still strains credulity here. Generally a fun issue, not much substance to it, but fun.
Yeah, it's good to have a better artist drawing the Collector, because first time we had Heck drawing the Collector, and I thought he wasn't doing a great job. And now with Buscema drawing the Collector, I really like it a lot better, because this has always been one of my favorite characters, and I think Buscema does a really good job on the Collector. I think he looks like he's got a lot of personality.
Yes.
Yeah, I always had a not a thing against the Collector. I always wanted more from the Collector. I wanted that he collected more. I mean, like you just mentioned, Till, that he had added somehow the Black Panther to his collection, and are the items that he has in it. Because here it is, a whole country with these precious metals in it and everything, and yet you don't want any of it. You just want this one guy in a suit in a cage. I never made sense to me in that sense of the word, but I always liked the Collector.
Yeah, I always liked him. I like all the elders of the universe, and then I thought that Steve Englehart did such a good job with bringing them all together for his Silver Surfer comic he did in the 80s.
Steve Englehart is one of my favorite writers.
Englehart is?
Well, Steve Englehart is one of my favorite writers. He did Captain America when Sal Buscema was drawing him.
Oh, yeah.
So it was Captain America and the Falcon. And that's when it had a particular urban flavor, because Captain America was always in the city when it was with the Falcon as a whole. It had a different, and it was sharp and direct to the point when Stephen Hawking wrote it. And I liked it, especially when odd things like the Stranger would show up. I like that, He always looked like the cousin to Batroc. Yeah. And he had a white afro. That was pretty good too.
So I think this brings us to the end of our 2 episodes that we're recording here. So before we say our goodbyes, Paris, do you have anything that you would like to say before we go? Anything you want to plug that you haven't already been able to talk about, or anything else?
Well, I am still once again plugging the Sutherlands and the India Speedway, but I'm also plugging my book in the India Speedway. Is called Marcus Arena. And that is kind of like Spartacus in space. And
Oh, great. That sounds fantastic.
And a book that's connected to it called Grits and Gravy. So there's a very specific book in that. And the thing that I'm doing, I'm going to call it by its name. The thing I didn't want anybody to say it yet until I got all of it owned, but I'll spend my time sending it out for people to see. You don't have to pay for it. I'm making sure you can see it because I'm just in love with drawing comics, and I want to share it. And it's called Fan Friction.
All right, Fan Friction. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like unsolicited fights for whatever reason I can come up with for interesting characters. One I got going now that I'll be sending you guys soon will be Hellboy versus the Blue Devil, and I'm hoping you guys will enjoy it.
Wow.
You know, we'll go from
That's
there.
a natural pairing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Nice.
We'll go from there.
Yeah, that
No
sounds
problem.
like tons of fun.
Yes, it is.
Oh. Can I randomly give you one more compliment before we're done? My favorite piece of art you ever did is the cover to Batman number 536 with Batman and Deadshot on the cover. That is such a fantastic cover. It really makes me wish you'd been the regular artist on Batman at some point. I know you got to draw part of Batman number 400, which was very cool. But that cover, do you remember this cover with Deadshot on it from Batman 536?
I do remember Deadshot. I like doing the Vigilante. I had a great time drawing the Vigilante.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you got to do the Vigilante.
Yeah, Matt,
Yes, I remember that issue.
you must have the wrong thing. I just looked up Batman 536, and that is a Kelly Jones cover.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, I have the issue wrong. Detective Comics 536, not Batman 536.
Yeah.
Detective Comics 536.
Is that the one Batman on the roof?
They're in a sewer. It's got Batman and Deadshot in a sewer, and it says showdown in the sewers. Deadshot's got his gun against a woman's head, and Batman is attacking him. Anyway, just a big fan of that cover. I just wanted to give you one final compliment.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Paris, thank you so much for coming out to our podcast here. We love hearing your stories.
I enjoyed it completely.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
No problem at all. I guess, are we ready to say our goodbyes, Matt?
Paris, thank you so much for coming out. This was great.
Thank you for inviting me, and I loved every minute of it.
Thank you once again. Hope to speak to you again sometime in the future.
Yay!
Right.
Okay.
Goodbye, everybody. Take care. Stay safe out there.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good
All
night.
right. Take care.
Bye, Paris.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.